Well, look, first of all, I want to say is, let's make Australia great again. That's what I'm about, that's what One Nation is about, is getting back our country. This is not the land or the country that I grew up in. I can see the changes that is happening. I can see what's happening to our youth and in our educational system, to industries, manufacturing. There is so much that has gone wrong with our country. But it's poor management. That's what it comes down to. Governments that have led the way with their policies, and that's why we are in such a mess that we are. I would like to dearly say thank you very much to all those people who brought your Australian flags. Good on you. Right, yes. There's, quite interesting though, the last sitting of Parliament, it was National Australia Flag Day, and I was told to take the flag off. They have an investigation into it saying that it was it's a prop. Now on the floor of Parliament you have the Australian flag, you have the Aboriginal flag, and you actually have the Torres Strait Islander flag. So we fly it in the chamber, the country is Australia, our flag is Australian, and they say it's a prop. So not only myself, also Jacinta Price was told to take it off. And of course McKim, the Green Senator, and I've got to tell you honestly, I've got no time for him whatsoever, can't stand the bar of the man. But anyway, he actually said, well, if she wears the Australian flag, I'm going to wear the Palestinian flag. So it was the Liberal Deputy President who said, okay, Jacinta, take off the flag. So it wasn't Labor, it was Liberal. And the President came in later, who was Labor, and said, take off the flag. And there'll be no decision with it until it goes through the committee or they make a decision on it whether it's a prop or not. Am I going to accept this? No. So anyway, I've got a bit of a surprise for them, and I will wear that flag again with pride on the floor of Parliament, and I will not. They can also ban me from the Parliament, suspend me, they can fine me, but anyway, let's deal with those issues. At least they can't throw me in jail, not again yet, anyway. That's what standing up for what you believe in. Look, I've got to say, I went to CPAC last weekend. Did anyone go to CPAC? Down in Brisbane? Okay, CPAC is for Conservative Side of Politics, to actually go there and speak to the public. Over 1,200 people turned up to it. It's held once a year. Very interesting. There was a lot of the coalition. Labor doesn't turn up, which is fair enough. But then again, to have some of these, some of my, what can I call them, colleagues or on the floor of Parliament, some other senators that actually turned up. And I've got to tell you this, I was fuming at one stage. There was actually Bridget McKenzie. You know Bridget McKenzie? Yep. She's a senator for Victoria, Conservative, right? She's National Party. When she got up on the stage and she said, we've got to deal with Islam. The incompatibility that it has in our country. And they want to introduce Sharia law courts. Does this ring a bell with you? Who else said that? Yeah, for many years. I have been saying that. Well, I nearly fell over when she said it. And I said, what amazes me, that's the first time I have ever heard her talk about it. Not on the floor of Parliament, not out in public, not anywhere, but they're in a safe place. I'm not knocking her for saying I wish more would say it and stand up for what the impact it's having on our country. But, you know, I just see these people as gutless, they are hypocrites, and they don't stand up and do and say what they will say to a captured audience, but won't go out there and say it publicly or do something about it on the floor of Parliament where it needs to be done. That's where laws and legislation is made that impacts our lives. I received a very, very warm welcome from the Australian people that were there. It was fantastic actually, because I spent time with people and it was quite encouraging. The number of people that are now coming on board with One Nation. Over the years, I have been ridiculed, I've been criticised, I've been called racist, I've ended up in prison because of my views. I had to be stopped. Tony Abbott, he said to me, he said, we had to stop you because I was taking Liberal Party votes. And guess what's happening now? I am taking the Liberal Party membership and the votes. Because I'll tell you what's happening with all this. Tony Abbott actually got up there and said, give us another try, give us another chance. Why? If you haven't made a difference with this country and we're in the mess that we are in now, then have a good look at yourself. Go and look in the mirror. And that's why I said a couple of weeks ago, I'm not going to be the bridesmaid to the Liberal Party anymore. I'm actually going for the top position in this country to actually be government. I will not be Prime Minister. I'm going to be upfront with you. That's not a possibility for that to happen. But I'm sure the party will go forward to actually get government at one stage. Why I say that is, I'm a realist. So you've got to look at your time. I've been in politics now since the last 3 decades. Since 1996 I got first elected, something like that. So you also have to look at the factors, my age. Don't worry, I want your vote at the next election. I'm definitely standing again at the next election, so for the Senate here in Queensland. But I'm looking at driving the party to get more people elected into the Senate after the next election. From there, I want the party to grow. I've got good people coming on board. Have you seen my daughter? Right. Well, she's a little gem, that one. I'd encourage her into politics, which I have. Not the boys. I wouldn't have my sons in politics. I'm being honest, I don't believe in nepotism. I believe you can either do the job or not. And she's not getting that just because she's a female either. I believe in the best person for the position. But she's going to be absolutely wonderful, and hopefully she will win that Senate seat in Tasmania at the next election. That's a younger generation coming through. But my time in politics, I can't give you a time on it. I don't know how much longer I will be in it, but I definitely will stand for the next election. And you never know how long I'm going to be there. I might be there for the full 6 years. But I have said to my staff, listen guys, if I become like a Joe Biden, tap me on the shoulder and tell me to move on. So anyway, we have this understanding. Last thing I want to be is a Joe Biden in the Parliament. So I do believe there is future for the party. I see the Liberal Party now are actually fractured. They've been taken over by the moderates, by the progressives. They should be in Labor or the Greens Party, and there are so many problems that's happening around the country with them. That's why I've said no more. And Tony Abbott says, give us another chance. Well, when you've had them, and actually climate change is one of the biggest issues that is destroying our country. And it is a con. It is an absolute con with this climate change. What we're doing. Climate is changing. I won't deny that. But climate is changing due to, natural resources. Carbon dioxide is a necessary gas. It is 0.004% of the gases in the atmosphere. We need carbon dioxide to actually make food grow, our trees grow, everything grows from it. And 97% of carbon dioxide comes from natural resources. Only 3%, that's only modelling. They're saying 3% is from humans. If they're so worried about carbon dioxide, then I'll ask you this question. Why has the current Labor government brought in 1.5 million people into the country over the last 3 years? Each person expels 21,000 or uses 21,000 tonnes of carbon a year. So if you're bringing in that many people, aren't you increasing your carbon emissions? Wouldn't that be their main concern? Why bring in mass immigration into the country, which is destroying our standard of living, a way of life, the cost of living? Yet here in Australia, we actually have about 500 million tonnes a year of carbon dioxide emissions. China puts out 12 to 14 billion. Billion. Something to think about, isn't it? China is not bound by the carbon emissions till 2060. India till 2070. You've got China, India and America have carbon emissions of up to 50%. USA will not sign the Paris Agreement. China's not signed to it. India's not signed to it. Like I said, they don't have to do anything till 2016, 2017. And then you have Russia as well. So what the hell are we doing? Why are our politicians headed down this path of these renewables that cannot deliver the power that we need? I have seen industries, manufacturing shut down, shut their doors because they can't afford the power anymore. I was speaking to one grocery shop the other day, quite a big grocery shop, but he said, my power bill now is $10,000 a month on top of rent. He said, I can't keep affording this. I've spoken to industries, Rockhampton, it was the Springs factory up there. He said, Pauline, he said, I put $1 million worth of solar paneling on my roof. He said, they make springs they export to over 50 countries around the world. And he said, that cost now, he said, is now costing me a further, and I'm talking about 5 years ago, an extra $200,000 a year in power. We've lost, since 2023, over 1,400 manufacturing companies have gone down. We have lost that amount in Australia. Your investment, Australian investment down to 1%, just over 1% Australia. They're not investing in Australia. We've seen under the Albanese government, 30,000 small businesses have actually gone insolvent because of the climate change, the cost of electricity. You know yourselves, your own power bills, look at the cost, how they've gone up. And Albanese told us, he said, your bills will go down by 2025 by $275 a year. That was an absolute lie. An absolute lie. So the whole thing is the cost of living. Then you've got your housing, as I said, your mass migration. Bring the people in the country. 1,544 a day are coming in. They've just brought another 1,500 up. People into the country from Gaza last Friday. Tony Burke welcomed them at the airport. Some of these people only had an hour to go through a security check. Their families live in the country. It's an absolute disgrace what this government is doing to this country. Do I have hopes for the future? I tell you what, it's running out because we don't have a lot of time. Because I tell you what's happening. Our children are being brainwashed in the educational system and in the universities to this way of thinking. Most of them will come out thinking they're going to vote Labor or vote the Greens. They have no understanding. And that's where it's up to you, me, the older generation, to actually sit down and talk to our children and grandchildren and explain to them, find out what they're being taught in school with climate change. Also, you need to actually understand what you're being taught about this gender dysphoria rubbish that's been brainwashed and telling in classes that you can choose whatever you want to be. I nearly fell over when my daughter said to me a few weeks ago, she said, Mum, she's very open with her 2 boys. One's 11, one's 8 in December. Anyway, she's, the 8-year-old, he's 7 actually, he's 7. So he comes home and says, Mum, have you got a penis? And she said, how do you know I haven't got a penis? What's this all about? Oh, at school they said we can decide whether we want a penis or a vagina. It is a joke, isn't it? It's funny, it's laughable. And so anyway, she went up to the school and the principal said, yeah, we're getting complaints about this. They bring a third party into the educational system to teach them about this gender, what you want to be. These kids are so confused. I got a email from a woman who's a PhD. She said, what's happening is that a 3-year-old has been told, 3-year-old, mind you, has been told about your sex. You can choose about sex, what you want to do. This is actually happening in the classrooms. People must be aware of the brainwashing that's going on. These kids have got enough to deal with. Let them be children, let them grow up, let them go through puberty, and then after 18, thank you. I have put it up on the floor 6 times for gender dysphoria only three, Senator Babette, Malcolm Roberts, myself, that actually supported this. Then you had Labor, Greens, all across bench, and then you had six of the Libs. Six of the Libs voted with them not to have an inquiry. This is only to allow the parents who came and saw each and every one of us at Parliament to say, we need to discuss this. We need to tell you what is happening to our children. We need to tell you the impact of the hormone treatments that is happening and the puberty blockers that the Greens stand up and say every time I said it's irreversible. They said, that's not right. It is reversible. It is not. It is irreversible. And when one parent says to me, she said, my daughter, she wanted to be a man. So she started the hormone treatment. Guess what? Her daughter's locked in the room now for 3 months at a time, will not come out of the door. She said, I've got to leave the food at the door. And she said, the daughter there is now going bald, hair on the chest, growing a beard, hates herself, and just hates life. That's only one thing. I heard it from other parents. And another parent said to me, she said, I've got a daughter who is 15. And she said, oh, Mum, I want to be a boy. You can't be a boy. You're a girl. And she's got another 8-year-old boy. So anyway, she thought, oh, well, she'll take her to the local nurse to have this discussion. She said within 20 minutes, the nurse had a discussion with her. Anyway, she still wanted to be a boy. And then she said, I'm at home with the child, with both my children. There's a knock on the door. So the daughter opens up the door. This fella comes in. And she said, I'm here to take your son. What do you mean you're here to take my son? You know, and she's thinking about her 8-year-old son. They're talking about the daughter, because parents cannot stand in the way of their children if they want to transgress to the opposite side. And she said, I was horrified. She said, I've rung the police and everything. But she said, this is what's actually happening. Parents' rights have been stripped from them of having control over their own children. And yet they won't do anything about it. The 6th time I put that up, guess what? I had about 25 to 31. So I've shamed them and I put it out there who the hell it is voting against this. And that's what we need to do, is don't give up. Stand up for your rights. Stand up for what you believe in. And keep push back all the time. If you know it's wrong, then stand up and say it's wrong. You have a right to have an opinion. You have a right to have a say. And that's what our freedom is about. That's our freedom of democracy, freedom of speech. And everything that is happening now is about control. You know that misinformation, disinformation bill that they wanted, right? Guess who first introduced that? The Libs. In 2019, the Liberal Party. You wouldn't think that, would you? So, we actually, Malcolm and I did a fantastic job to make the public aware about it, and therefore, it wasn't brought in. Now they're talking about wanting to bring in disinformation about climate change. Why? Why can't we have a discussion about it? Why do you have to shut people down to have a different opinion?
Was that the one she abstained from voting for?
What are you hiding? And that's with everything. Climate change, as I said, it's just one thing after another that I see come across our desks all the time, or what we see on the floor of Parliament. And I'll just tell you this little one also. That because these big companies have to get rid of the carbon emissions to comply with it. So you've got about 215 big companies have to pay enormous amounts of money to actually get rid of their carbon emissions if they want to work in Australia or manufacture or an industry. Anyway, they came up with the idea to put supercritical waste into the Great Artesian Basin. Has anyone heard about that one? Right, a few people have. It was brought to my attention by a farmer. I was out at Bundaberg. It was brought out to my attention there. Anyway, I followed it up with Colin Boyce. His National Party is a great guy. Anyway, Colin tried to get his National Party to listen to him. They wouldn't. They weren't interested. Now, the Great Artesian Basin covers 1.7 million square kilometres of land. It's the biggest of its kind in the world. It has about 51,000 wells that go into it. There are farmers that use it, and communities and townships that use it. What they were talking about is from the Mulmeron power plant to put in supercritical waste into the Great Artesian Basin. That would amount to about 300 million tonnes of waste into it. I spoke to Ian Clymer. Have you heard of Ian Clymer? Ian, yeah, great geologist, scientist. Ian Clymer said if you do that, he said block up the aqueducts. And he said you'd have great damage that'd be done to our water source. I spoke out against it and allowing this to happen. Susan McDonald, who's your senator, one of the senators here in Queensland, when I was speaking about it, she got up on the floor of Parliament and said, well, I don't agree with you on this one. She was quite happy to see it. That was only a pilot program of 300 million tonnes of it. You know what they were expecting for it to go in? 1 billion tonnes of supercritical waste into our Great Artesian Basin. It was not only myself and Colin Boyce and Bob Catter were outside the courts because we'd taken it to court, and then with AGFORCE and the National Farmers Federation that we fought that, and guess what? The state government woke up themselves and actually stopped it here in Queensland. So a bit of common sense prevailed over that, only because we didn't get up. Where are we going as a nation, as a country? Well, you're right about that. We are going to be out the toilet, and it concerns me greatly. I said up before the last election, if we get Labor in here again, my concern was we would probably never be able to turn it around. The damage being done to this country is unbelievable, and there are policies that have been put in, but there's been no pushback from the coalition government. Have a look at what they've done. Susan Lee, who likes Susan Lee? Please, don't be... Oh, this young fellow, future generation up there, is about 6. He put up his hand. The whole thing is that there is no true leadership. A lot of people like Jacinda. I get on very well with Jacinda too. And Jacinda has been talking my language about, the Aboriginal issues. We want accountability. We want to know where the 30 billion or close to 40 billion a year is going on Aboriginal affairs. Where's the money going? One fellow I named on the floor of Parliament, and guess what? I had the department come to me and said, don't say any more. And I said, you've had it in your hands for 2 years to get him for corruption. Nothing's happened. No, I won't give up. Guess what? He finally went down for corruption. So it's actually I've tried to put up a private members bill about Aboriginality to define it. No one's interested. And why do I do that? I tick the box. That's all we do. The census tick the box. I'm an Aboriginal. Do you know there's no definition to Aboriginality? Do you know that you can self-identify you are actually an Aboriginal, or you can get the elders to say, we accept you, and you're actually an Aboriginal. The first one after the referendum that we had in 1967, the first census, because that referendum wasn't bringing them onto the census, because they weren't counted in the census. They had the vote. There was no problem about that. It's only to include them in the census as Australian citizens. In an Australian city, why not? But what happened with that then is the first census that was put out there was around about 116,000. By 1996, it was 352,000. By 2016, it was what were we up to? 669,000. No, that's 221. 669,000. Last one, 221. It was over 820,000. So we had an increase in 5 years of 25% claiming to be Aboriginal when the population only increased by 8%. So it's very viable to claim to be Aboriginal. So guess what? Tick the box. So I tell you, if you're a pensioner and you're on a prescription, if you can tick the box and say you're Aboriginal, you get a prescription for nothing. Okay. I've got no problem with it. Okay? I'm sick and tired of getting it purely based on race. When I've got people, families, living in cars, in tents, under bridges, and how they're being treated, and the kids are entitled to a decent education but don't get it because you're not Aboriginal, you're not Torres Strait Islander. The inequality is not true. And that's the main reason why I got into politics in 1996. I stood for the seat of Oxley, and I was under remember going to one meeting, I didn't say it, but the question was asked, and guess what they said to this woman? Sit down, shut up, you know nothing, we know everything. I thought, wow, whoa, what have I got myself into? So anyway, I came out and I wrote a letter because Robert Tickner, who was actually the Minister for the Keeping Government in Aboriginal Affairs, he said, let's not lock up Aboriginals. Deaths in custody. Do you know what death in custody can be? You're actually out in a car chase of that and you're killed, that's death in custody. It's not that. You might have an illness and you keel over. You might be, charged with something. So you're not actually in the custody in the prisons. So you can die at any time. That's a death in custody. So I said, let's not lock up anyone. Let's treat everyone equally as a society. Well, didn't that get me in hot water? And they came after me and said I had to apologise. I said, no. So because I wouldn't apologise, that's when it came from John Howard, I had to go. He could not afford to have a racist as a candidate because I was calling for equality for all Australians. So it came from John Howard. Well, I met up with Peter Costello at the airport a few years ago, and he said, Pauline, he said, I remember that night, I was with John Howard, and your name came up, and he said, who the hell is Pauline Hanson? And I said, well, you certainly know who I am now, don't you, Peter? So anyway, so that's all I wanted, is equality for all Australians, regardless of the race, colour, creed, skin, even those migrants that have come here from new way of life. And that's why a lot of them support me, because they've come here to be Aussies. And yet we see the division of our nation happening time and time again. The pride that you should have in your nation, pride in your flag, pride in who you are, yet it's being stripped from us. And when it happens on the floor of Parliament, then you know we're in trouble. We're in deep trouble. And that's why the push for multiculturalism, that's why I spoke out about it, against it, in 1996 in my maiden speech, because I knew it would create divisions with us as a nation. Why do you think the UN wanted it? Why do you think every country took it up? Because they want to break down the national identity of a country, because then they can control you. When you're strong, united as a country. So that was their plan, to be able to do it. And I saw through this. And I said, you'll have your ghettos, you'll have your individual enclaves. And I was right. And I was ridiculed for it. Isn't it amazing now? You've had John Howard, you've had, Merkel, you've had all these other leaders around the world now come out and say multiculturalism hasn't worked. Have a look at the other countries. Have a look at England. What's happened in England? Germany, France, Denmark, Canada, the whole lot of them. And if we do not actually get on top of this, the same thing is happening here. The division that is happening in this country. I'm not anti-migrant, but in a sensible, managed way, you bring people in the country. My policy is to cut it right back to 130,000 a year, and then wait till we actually integrate these people. I would make people wait 8 years before they get their citizenship or can apply for it. I would not have these people on our welfare system, which is draining our welfare system. And they must be people who will assimilate to our culture and our way of life. And I do not believe in people. And I do not believe in bringing in people who are of the fundamentalist Islamic ideology. I'm not afraid to say it, because I can see the divisions that's happening, and I do not want Australia to end up like England. So these are strong stances that I'm actually taking. And that's where the difference is between myself and the Liberal Party. You will never hear this from them. You will never hear it. And also with the, migration. I told Morrison, I said the immigration at that time was 260,000. I said, it's too many still coming to the country. So he dropped it back to 190,000. But you still had that many queued up on the visas coming to the country. You've got over 750,000 foreign students in the country. And of course, the Labor Party wanted to cap it last year. Guess what? The Libs didn't. The Libs didn't vote for it. Guess what? So now the Labor has increased another 25,000 on top of it to nearly 300,000. They brought in this year. So again, the Libs didn't do it. My God. And look what happened to our farming sector. You know, they're on their knees. They're not getting the support and help because the cost of running their irrigators, the cost of running their farms. These poor buggers, I really feel sorry for them. They're there for the love of it. They love the country, and yet it's been stripped from them. I tried to support the dairy industry here in Queensland in 2018. I put a private member's bill on for a parliament to actually give them their farm gate cost for milk. So the cost of milk plus a 10 cents per litre profit on top of it. Guess what? You know who voted against it? Liberals and National Party. Bridget McKenzie didn't want to support it. It lost by one vote. One vote. Because she wanted to protect the farmers down in Victoria. Guess what now? We're bringing milk in from overseas. And we've gone from 1,500 dairy farmers to 200 in Queensland. So we lost our dairy industry. We used to supply about 19 billion litres of milk. Now it's down to about 10 or 12 billion. So we lost our dairy industry. The sugar cane industry was hell a mess. That's another thing that I say, was the sugar cane industry with the code of conduct. Guess what? It sat in the bottom drawer of the minister's office until they finally came to see. They said, Pauline, we need the code of conduct. And I said, what's that? They said to protect it because Wilma, which is a foreign investor up in controlling the mills, wanted to control the mills plus the marketing. They said that the farmers are going under. So he told me about it, got my head around it, quite involved. Anyway, because I had the balance of power, the shared balance of power, they needed my vote on something, which I would have supported them anyway, but I'd sell my soul unless I believe in it. I said, right, you want this, I want this. Guess what? I got the code of conduct for them. So there's so much that I have been able to do, and Malcolm Roberts and I have done over this period of time. You know, another family, English family, out here since 2010, only last year, the year before, they had them locked up in a detention centre ready to deport them. I knew them, I had met with them. So it's only because I went to the immigration minister. I got the support of the Labor member for that electorate as well behind me. He supported me with it. We got them to actually be able to stay in Australia. No drain on the Australian taxpayer, ran his own mechanic business, only because of some stupid paperwork. They had him in detention, ready to deport them out of the country after they sold up everything in their own country and made a life here in Australia with their daughter, who'd been through the university here. It's, and I'll just tell you this little thing too, and it just may give you an understanding why I'm still here and what I've been able to achieve. My staff, I don't get to read all my mail or email because, as you can imagine, we get a few thousand emails a week. So one special email came and they brought this letter to my desk. And I was in Canberra at the time. They said, have a read of this one. So I read it, and this fellow wrote, and he said, look, you don't know me. He said, but I'm writing on behalf of this family. And just to let you know, the daughter has this illness. She's 2.5 she was. And she has this illness, it's a spinal condition, but she's actually going to die unless she has this medication for it. We don't have the medication in Australia, they have it in America. Anyway, the family were going to move to America. The father, husband got a job over there, and with his job, he would be able to get this medication in America for the daughter. Now, the medication costs $1 million. To have this medication. Anyway, it's life-threatening. The child was going to die. Anyway, I rang up the mother and I said, look, I got the letter, and she said, oh yeah. She said, we've taken up a GoFundMe page. That only raised $60,000. She said, we're not going to get there. She said, my husband applied for this job in America, but now, because of COVID, we can't leave the country. So that was it. That's what they're looking down the barrel. Where's my daughter? So I said, look, leave it with me. I don't make promises I can't keep. My word's my bond, and I try to, and I said, leave it with me, I'll see what I can do for you. It just happened that day that Matisse Pullman came into my office, and of course they were negotiating with me on some other thing, right? And Matisse is a lovely man. He's got 3 children himself. Anyway, I said, Matisse, read this letter. And he was actually, you could see he was very upset by it. He said, leave it with me. He came back to me within a couple of hours and said, you've got the money. And I said, wow. So I rang your mother, she couldn't believe it, and she was so grateful. But what happened out of that is that the pharmaceutical company came to the picture to provide that medication, but now they've introduced that medication into Australia for all the other children who were affected by it. Within 2 years, we'd saved 26 lives. The part about it was I was the last politician. They'd been to everyone, and I was the last one. She was a mother from Toowoomba. So this is what's so important about my job. I don't take it lightly. I don't take it for granted. And there's so many times that you can make such a difference to people's lives. You can turn it around. And the people that ring us up, they might be going through family law issues or problems that they have, and they know that they're losing their children or they're suicidal, and yet we can make a difference in just having that conversation. We can't do anything, with the court system, but it's just being able to talk to them, give them hope. And I think that's so important. My staff are like that, and they take on this extra responsibility. They're not counsellors, they're just ordinary Australians who care about their fellow, citizens, their fellow Australians, and do the best job that they can. That's what they've lasted with me for over 9 years. So we take pride in what we're doing, trying to represent you, the people. And so I've got a lot of gratification out of doing this job. I've had a lot of heartache. I don't know. Never tell anyone to piss off back to where. Right? You get yourself in hot water, I can tell you. So I've got that coming up in November, if you want to know how that's going. I had this left-leaning bloody judge, I can tell you. Sorry, this children here. I had this, but that's an adjective, the Australian adjective, isn't it? So I've had this left-leaning judge that's self-professed white, privileged, that was in my case and actually loves women, has a son transitioning, and so I had everything against me. And so anyway, that case went against me, so he found it against me, so I have to appeal that, and that's going ahead in November. So keep your fingers crossed. But if I do win this case, guess what? You know the legislation 18C? The Racial Discrimination Act, you can't offend, harass, intimidate, or insult anyone. Well, guess what? That'll be thrown out because I've already said it. So it's important that in that case, if I don't win that, guess what? It looks like I'm going to the High Court. I haven't had a good look at those judges there yet and see what my chances are going to be. But anyway, I find my life has been a roller coaster ride. It's up and down like this. And you just got to keep going. And people say to me, "You're going to hang there. You got to keep going, aren't you?" Yeah, you're right. I'm going to keep going. I keep going. But like I said to you, ladies and gentlemen, I just appreciate you actually coming today. To listen to a politician. And I think it's very important that you know what the hell is going on in our parliament. You're here because you're concerned. You know you are. You know it's not the country. You're concerned about the future for your children and grandchildren. That's why you want to hear what's going on. And you've come here, and I hope it is because you see One Nation, myself, as hope for the future. Someone who's actually going to be there to stand up and fight for you. And I'm going to keep calling for accountability, and I'm going to keep putting pressure on them because I want them to realise they work for you. We work for you. You, the people. You control everything. But what you have to do, and what I will be trying to push more and more, understand your voting system, understand how your preference system works. Most people don't. I have tried to inform people for years now, put out video clips and different things I want to not get you following One Nation just because One Nation. Of course I want you to vote for One Nation. But I would rather empower you so you know how your vote works. So that you can do the best job with that vote and get the representation that you need. Stop voting for all this marijuana party or whatever, hemp party and all the rest of it. Because you know what? They flow their preferences onto Labor. So understand, you mark your ballot paper. Look at your list. Who do you want up there first? Who's going to represent you first? Then you think to yourself, well, if they don't get up, who's my next best choice? Then you put it number 2. Then who's my next put? Then you put them number 3. So if your first one goes out, your preference will flow to your second. If they get knocked out, then it flows down the line until someone is elected and gets 50% of the vote. I'm going to be putting out this literature, video clips. I want you to know you've been dumbed down for too long, and they've kept you dumbed down because then they know that they're controlling you. Don't be controlled anymore. About time we got our country back. It's about time we made our country great again. Thank you very much. You're my first one in Queensland that I've actually come out. We've got a function tonight in town at the Leagues Club. I think it's the Lotus Leagues Club. And then tomorrow we're at Harvey Bay, Wide Bay, we're going to Gympie. So we're travelling around. So if you know of anyone throughout Queensland, just keep an eye on my Facebook page and we'll let you know where I'm going to go. Also visiting, I'll be down at Tamworth, Central Coast, I'm going to Tasmania. So there's a lot of travelling. Next week I'll be down at Senate Estimates. So, and hopefully just to start asking some questions of our ministers and bureaucrats and hopefully get some answers out of them. Yes, I have a lot of money here.
You're not on it, boy. You're too low anyway, mate. You be right, mate.
I'd just like to take 3 questions if anyone wants a question. I'll try and answer it if I can. Lady here. Why do we have to have preferences? Right. We have a system in Australia that was the preference system. When I was in 1996, we had optional preferential voting, but John Howard's organised One Nation, so